Yeah, once again, thanks for meeting with me. I just look at all of your accomplishments that you've done, and you're, a bodybuilder, entrepreneur, business owner, mental health advocate. But, obviously season 3 winner of NXT, where you proved to be the fastest superstar to push Hornswoggle around the ring in a wheelbarrow.
I'm like, oh my God, you just jogged my memory. Thank you so much. That was like a really cool little setup introduction there. Yeah, I honestly, like, it's so crazy. I mean, I left wrestling in 2014, so quite a while ago. Right. And so it's been over 10 years since I kind of like dipped my toe into the whole world of wrestling. I had a lot of like demons to overcome when I left WWE, because I'm a completely different person now than I was then. And I was struggling so much with so many things during my time that I was wrestling. And I always looked back at it, like, as I left, I looked at it and I kind of looked at it in a negative light, like my career as a whole, because I was like, I just was so stuck on, I felt like I never got to be who I could be, in the wrestling world and stuff. But now my perspective is so different, because like every single thing that I've ever gone through or done in my life has just shaped me, wow, to where I am now. And so now I look back at it like very lovingly, and like I forgive myself for a lot of things that I beat myself up for, and what I was struggling through, like emotionally and mentally and stuff. So, but when I started, I got an opportunity to try out, and it was me and my best friend, one of my best friends, and we went together to Tampa. And at that time I was just kind of like floating around in life. Like I was going to school half-assed, like not really knowing what I wanted to do. I had started going to school for special effects makeup, because like I just love super creative shit like that. Yeah. And but I was just like half-assing everything, because like I just didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was just like, and I was just like struggling with a lot of stuff like in my family. And so when I got a chance to try out, like so they take you through, or back then they take you through a week of like a week in the life of someone who's signed to the developmental center, right? And back then it wasn't the performance center. It was this tiny little 3-room facility in Tampa. And we had like 2 rings, and it was so interesting to see versus like what you see on TV, like, where that was where it all started for me, at least. And so I loved it. Like after the first day, they essentially like teach you how to take a bump, and they take you through like some of the physicality stuff in the ring, some super basic technical stuff. And like, it's rough. Like speaking of, we were talking about, I was out on the boat all day yesterday, and I felt like I got in a car accident. It's like, it's the same kind of thing. Like your nervous system is so jolted because you're not used to that kind of impact, even just learning it. So after that first day, my friend that came with me, she was like, I'm not cut out for this. She was like, I don't like this. Like, I don't want to do it. And I was like, I was super scared, because she was like, I'm just going to go home. And I felt very alone in it, but I was like, I feel like this is something for me. Like, I want to do this. And, so I went through the rest of the week, and I was so determined to get signed, because I was like, this is the thing for me. Like, I'm going to build my life, on something like this. This will be the thing for me. Right. Like that was my mentality. So I tried out, I think there were like 5 or 6 other people there. And like, we did, I think in my opinion, what got me hired was I did this every Wednesday, in the school, the training facility. We would have a promo day. So you get up and you cut a 1-minute promo in the ring with the mic, cameras and everything, and like all your peers and like the coaches and trainers and stuff are there. And so it's like so scary. So I cut the most ridiculous promo. Like it was kind of like an SNL skit style and just really ridiculous. And when I was done, there was like crickets in the room. Like everyone was like, and then John Laurinaitis was like, and then I started clapping, and then everyone was like, oh, okay, it's okay to clap or laugh. So it was like this moment where like everything was just like silent. And I was like, oh my God. But I feel like that was like one of the things that helped me get signed. So I got signed, and I was living in Houston at the time, and I think I got a phone call a couple weeks after my tryout. And then, so I ended up moving to Tampa within like a month and a half or something. And I just started at FCW, Florida Championship Wrestling. Right. And at that time, the developmental, there was only like, I think like 7 of us, 7 girls. And then the rest was guys, maybe about, like 60, 70 people total. Right. And that when I moved there, I had literally never wrestled before. I was interested in trying out because I was like, this seems like something I can do as far as like personality wise and like physically. And I was super competitive my whole life. So I thought, I was like, I can do this, but I wasn't like a huge wrestling fan or anything. And then, so like when I got there, I was just learning the super basics of everything. And it was the end of NXT season 2. Yeah. And they were going into season 3. And it was still when NXT was televised, it was on the Sci-Fi Network. Yeah. And, they were keeping this big secret, like the network, but it was going to be the first all girls season. And so they had primed and prepped like all the girls for months and months. And they had already recorded all the content for their intros and their character stuff. And like, it was me and another girl that were new. And like, we didn't even know that was going to happen until like maybe a few weeks before the show was going to debut. They told everybody like, oh, by the way, it's been a big surprise, but NXT is going to be all girls. And these girls are going to go up. And I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. And I was like a little sad because they were going to be going on the road. So I was going to be there. There was just a few of us girls that were going to be left, not on the road with the NXT girls. And then like literally, and they had hired this girl, her name was Aloisa. I think that was her wrestling name. She was like this 6'9" chick, and she was going to be like the big draw. And so they had her start coming in the week or two before the show debuted, and just to like get in some ring work and whatever. And they actually ended up firing her like 3 or 4 days before the show debuted, because I think there was some stuff that she had done that didn't really align with the way that WWE was heading as far as like being way more PG. Yeah. And so I got a call on a Friday from John Laurinaitis and saying, he was like, guess what, kid, you're going to debut on Tuesday NXT. And I was like, I literally cried because I was like, oh my God, it was the coolest thing, like literally the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. But I was also like, oh my God, like I'm so not ready. I literally did not know how to wrestle. I had never had a match, and I didn't have a character. I didn't have a wrestling name. I had just submitted. Actually, they gave me the name Ricky Vaughn because I had submitted a bunch of names. Mm-hmm. And like, that was the name that they kind of refined and gave me. And I was like, I loved it. And then they're like, you're not going to be that. You're not Ricky anymore. Like, and so I got the call. I cried. I called back home. I talked to like the people that were important to me, and they're like, this is what you signed up for. Like, just go for it. Yeah. And then I didn't have any money because I was like bartending here in Houston when I got signed. Like, I was just on a developmental contract salary. It was okay. It was enough to like get by, but I just didn't have any extra money. And so they gave me, I told them, I was like, they were like, well, I was like, I don't have wrestling boots. I don't have anything to wear on TV. Like, I don't have anything. So they told me to go to the school. I went to FCW and they gave me $1,000 petty cash, and they were like, just go buy Divas stuff. And I was like, what does that mean? So like, I remember I spent so many hours like in the mall, because I just like, I didn't know what to buy. I just didn't have, I literally only had like Chuck Taylors and like denim shorts. Like, that's literally the extent of my wardrobe. And so like I ended up, I went to TV. It was my first time ever to be like, so they brought all the NXT girls up to be at Raw backstage, just so we could get a feel for everyone and get to know everything. And so we were backstage all day at Raw, and it was so terrifying. Yeah. Because I had never met any of these people, any of the people that I saw on TV, any of these wrestlers are like, it was it was like so surreal, so intimidating. Cause I was like, I felt so much. I was like, I don't belong here, and like wrestling is very much, the type of industry that's like, you have to pay your dues. And like, I was so intimidated because like I hadn't, but it was like, wasn't my fault. Like, I just fell into like a really cool opportunity. So I felt that pushback from a lot of people, like, why are you here type thing. So I felt like I was like always walking on eggshells. But I was like torn because I was like, so I was like really want to make a name for myself. And so, I was backstage all day, at Raw on Monday. And then they were filming, our SmackDown was live NXT was live on Tuesdays on Sci-Fi Network before they filmed SmackDown. So, but the whole production was NXT filmed first, and then SmackDown, and then I think there was like Superstars or some other show too in between. And like it was in Baltimore, and I just remember every single thing about that day, and like it was just so cool. And I told myself like, I have nothing to lose. Like I was literally the biggest underdog ever. Like I had no experience whatsoever. No one expected me to win. And because it was a reality based elimination show, right? So people voted and and they gave me the name Kaitlyn, and I hated it because I was like, this doesn't fit me. And I had always just assumed that like their expectation was for me to just be a body to fill in that spot and then like get eliminated and then go back down to FCW to learn how to wrestle. And it was just like, it was insane. Like, I don't even remember I remember being really embarrassed so many times on TV because they would like mess with us on TV because it was live, right? They would like put us on the spot. And I think I always did like pretty well, but like when it came to trivia or having wrestling knowledge, I didn't know anything. So I was always so embarrassed about that. And like, just so many moments where it was like so cringy to me. But like, I just kept pushing through. And I got really lucky and fortunate to have Vicky Guerrero as my pro. Cause you know, all of the girls, we were rookies and then we each had a pro. Sure. And so I got Vicky, who is just an incredible human being. Like she loves the business. And she was like, she helped me so much because she was just this monster heel. And so, you know, we had such a cool chemistry together. So I became like this big underdog because everyone was like, you know, Vicky was such an asshole on TV. Yeah. And so like, it was just like the perfect combination of things. And like, I attribute so much of that to why I ended up winning the show. And that was, I was like, oh my God, the day that I won, I was like, oh my God, I did it. And then I really realized that was just like the very beginning because I got put on the main roster. Like after winning, that was like my prize. And so they put me on the main roster, but I still didn't know anything. And so like I had to like prove myself all over again once I made it to the main roster.
Well, you did pretty good for yourself because obviously you won the Divas Championship. But I don't know if you checked this out, but a few months ago, WWE put out this documentary, if you want to do it, or this program. It was the 50 greatest women's wrestlers. And did you see this? You're number 49 on it, on the list.
I did not see that. No way.
Yeah. So out of the 50 greatest women's wrestlers, that's the name of it. You're number 49.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
You didn't.
Oh my God. Is it a good, did you watch the documentary?
I didn't watch all of it. I watched the beginning, and like I said, like Kaitlyn, like you were there, number 49. I'm like, oh, sweet. Wow. And then, but AJ Lee, which was your greatest rival, she's number 19 on that list.
Wow. Who's number 1?
Oh, I think, Trish.
Yeah, of course.
Of course.
Wow. That's so cool. What an honor. That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. Because before the NXT season 3, the all women's, as you just said, that's when, y'all were still being preferred to as divas.
Yes.
But you and AJ, did y'all realize that y'all were, I guess, part of the beginning of this women's revolution that was happening?
Well, it's what we wanted. Like, this is like such an interesting or like important part. Like that when they gave me money to go buy stuff so I could wear it on TV. So I didn't have anything. That's all the stuff that I bought to debut in. They told me I couldn't wear. They're like, that's not like, that doesn't really fit like what we're looking for. So I literally debuted in someone else's dress.
Oh, wow.
I debuted in Naomi's pink sparkly dress. And like, literally that really solidified to me that like who I am truly like isn't what they want. And so I operated for so long under this impression that I had to try to be someone else. Right. And so like, I never felt aligned with like the whole persona or the whole, idea of like what a diva is. Like I never fit that, and neither did AJ. And so we found so much, our bond was so much of like, we felt like we were these outsiders, but we had the ability and like the opportunity to change things for the women. And like, we absolutely paid our dues. Like we got the shit beat out of us a lot on TV, just like as, extra bodies and stuff as we were working our way up. And it was, there were days like I dreaded going to TV because I felt so out of place. I felt trapped. I'm like, I want to be who I am, but like they're telling me like that's not good enough, or like that's not what we want. So I have to try to be this other thing. And so like for years, I tried all these different types of outfits, like these stretchy, sparkly, like shiny stuff. And I'm like, I was like, I think this is what they want. And it just never felt right. And I never felt aligned with any of it. And so, it was really cool to have AJ, because we really truly were and still are very, very close. Like we were best friends, and we were like this really cool support for each other. And she was like a huge like inspiration to me because of just like her story and like her talent and like her passion and love for wrestling. And another thing that kind of held me back, I did this to myself, but I was like, because I looked at her and I'm like, she's wanted this her whole life. And I'm like, I haven't. So like, you know, so that kind of helped me back too. So it was really fun to have her. We traveled together, and like we made the really hard days like really fun together. You know, like we had each other. And we had all these like cool ideas for storylines and stuff. And like whenever NXT wasn't a reality show anymore and it was just kind of floating, it was like a random show, we had the ability to kind of like write our own stuff and like do what we wanted, which was really cool. And because no one really producer wise, and no one really like cared that much about NXT at that point, because it was just it wasn't aired on TV anymore in the States. It was just overseas, like in some countries. And like, so we really had this cool opportunity to try stuff and just like do stuff that would never normally be approved on SmackDown or Raw or anything. So yeah, we tried a lot of different things. Some things stuck, you know, we would try to create our own stuff on Twitter, and you know, sometimes that carried over, and we would go to the announcers and we would try to, you know, or the commentators would go there and say like, you know, this is kind of what we're developing about our characters and stuff, or this is the story we're trying to push. And sometimes they would, you know, play along with it, and sometimes they wouldn't. It just depended on what Vince wanted, right? So like what the overall picture was. But I think like it's the perfect example for me, at least, of like kind of keeping yourself in your own prison. Like because I held myself back so much, and I can see it now, but because like I was so afraid to step into who I truly am, or who I felt that I could be as far as like a character, because like I was never like a really small, like Kelly type of girl. And like, that's really what Vince was like, that's all he wanted. It was very old school. And so even when I got hired, they were like, you need to lose weight. And I was like in pretty good shape then. And my weight fluctuated a lot when I was with WWE, because it was such an emotional roller coaster for me. So there was a point where after I had won NXT and I got put on the main roster, but I wasn't on TV at all, because like, they just didn't know what to do with me. I was like, well, maybe it's because like, I don't look the way like I need to look. So I did this crazy diet, and like, I lost a ton of weight, and like, I was ripped. I had like abs, veins, and like it didn't make a difference. Like it didn't do anything. So I was like, okay, maybe this isn't good enough. So I kept trying to find ways to be good enough for them to be like, oh, I see you. Like, here's a spot. And so like, I just started creating, I was like, okay, I'm not this, and I'm not like a Beth Phoenix either. I'm like this in between thing. So that's where I started calling myself the hybrid diva, because like, I felt like I didn't fit any of these physical body types or characters, and because of the way that like I started in WWE, I didn't have a character, so I was just myself. So I always like was just like, I'm just me. So like, the more that I stepped into that, the more that I'm like, okay, well, I'm just me, and if I can just be me, like that's how I will succeed, you know. And then when I started, so Fit Finley was the Divas, like he always helped us on our matches. He was like the diva whisperer. Everybody called him that when we were there. And I remember he got let go, or he had to go on a hiatus, or whatever you want to call it, because something that happened overseas on a tour. And so Fit was gone. And like, while he was gone, we had like a couple people that tried to take over that whole like diva producer spot. And no one really quite fit it, because the internal struggle with the women, we never got any TV time. So what happened, instead of working together as a unit to elevate the women's division, everyone there at that time, when AJ and I were still really new, everyone was just like so much out for themselves and so shitty and so catty. And like, we were holding ourselves down because we couldn't see the bigger picture. And like, and there was so much fighting all the time so we never got any TV time. We'd always get like 3 to 5 minutes. Yeah. So we never got the ability to put any of our characters over. Like we never got anybody emotionally invested in what we were doing. And because of that it was like a perpetual cycle. That told the producers and Vince and everybody that like the women aren't deserving of more time. So they never gave us more time. So we could never get ahead. And so the girls, they just like didn't see it big picture, and there's so much bullying, and it was just such bullshit. And so when it would come, like whenever we would get the card for the match and we would see what women's match there was, if it was like a battle royal where everybody got to get in the ring, but no one really got to get any of their moves in or whatever, just depended. But no matter what the match was, or the occasion, there was always internal fighting between like when we're putting the match together. And like, that's why we went through so many producers, because we didn't have Fit. And we felt like Fit was the one who really understood our struggle, like what we were going through, because there really was only one spot. And so everyone, the way they saw it, the women, they were like, well, I can't be nice to you. I can't be friends with you. I can't help you. Cause like, that's my spot. Right. So like no one elevated each other. Wow. And that's another thing that AJ and I did for each other. We elevated each other. Because like we saw the bigger picture, and like, so we protected each other and we elevated. And that's what part of like what made our bond so strong. Anyways, so Fit was gone for a long time. So I was just like floating around. I was just never in any, I would write storylines over and over and over again. And then they would get given to someone else or whatever. Cause like, I just hadn't proved myself, but I didn't know how, because I could never get on TV after I won NXT, besides, random backstage segments and stuff like that. So I remember the day that Fit came back, we had a Divas Battle Royal on Raw for whoever won was going to be the number one contender for the title. And I think Layla had the title at the time. And I had been doing... So Eve was the number one contender at the time, and Layla had been doing a lot of like storyline stuff. And I had been pitching for months, like this whole storyline with Eve on SmackDown. And when we started building it was with Booker T. And I had pitched that I was going to become the new assistant general manager or something. Yeah. And so, but Eve and I were fighting over the position. And because we had a little bit of back and forth on TV already, there was kind of a built-in storyline. But when we got the card for the Battle Royal, I was one of the first people out. Like I was just going to get eliminated. So when you're low on the totem pole or you're not relevant in a story, you just, you get eliminated. And so Fit, he had all of us, and he came up to me and he's like, why are you still not on TV? And I was like, I don't know. And he was like, you work so hard. And he's like, I know you're talented. And that was really big for him to say, because he loved us, but he was like tough on us too. And it was rare. I had never heard him say anything like that to me. So he was like, I'm going to change this. And he was like, you're going to be in there last with Eve, because you've built up a story with her. And like, I know I've seen that, and like, I know it'll make sense, whatever. So everyone was pissed. All the girls were pissed that like, because they were so used to me just being like, the ones that was like out first didn't really matter and whatever. And everybody was fighting for that number one contender spot. And so they were just like so shocked. And then, so it was, Layla was on commentary. And so this was live on Raw. I remember we had Brad Maddox. This is his first time ever reffing on Raw as well. And Eve and I had this like dope spot at the end. And like Eve was supposed to go over because she was going to be the number one contender. Cause like, that's just how the story was playing out between her and Layla. And Vince loved Eve. Vince had given a lot of my storyline stuff that I wrote to Eve, but like he loved her, and I get it. I loved her too. She's amazing. She's an amazing person. She helped me a lot, so much, and I attribute a lot to her. And like I have a special place in my heart for her. So the spot was, I was supposed to clothesline Eve over, and she was gonna flip over, hang on, and then pull me out, and it was gonna eliminate me, and then. So, she was going to be the number one contender and the story was going to go that way. And so it came down to the spot and I clotheslined her, but I didn't do it hard enough. So she kind of went and she like held on and she was like, hit me again. And so I was like, I don't remember if I ran and hit the ropes or what I did, but I came back and I like JBL'd her over so hard that she let go. She fell on the floor and she got eliminated. And I was like, oh my God, I literally immediately thought I was going to get fired because like it was live. And like that was one of my first big opportunities ever. And like Fit put so much confidence in me that he's like, you can do this. And I just was like, oh my God, I messed it up. And like Brad Maddox, he's like, it was his first time on live TV. And he was like, oh my God. And we're just standing there. It was like a true reaction to what happened. Like, no one expected me to win. I didn't expect to win. This wasn't supposed to happen. And so he has Vince like in his ear and they're like in the producers and Gorilla, they're like, celebrate. So he like grabbed my hand and we're celebrating. And I was like, oh my God. And I just thought for sure I was going to get fired. So like after the segment ended, I walked back through Gorilla. Yeah. And Vince was laughing hysterically. Cause like, think about it. Think about how much shit he's seen, right? Yeah. Like with wrestling, like he's seen everything. Eve was crying. Fit was laughing. Vince was laughing. And they were just like, all right, let's go. And like at that time too, the writer for the women, his name is Tom. And he's like one of my dearest friends still. And he was really working his way up too, as a writer. And so Tom pulled me aside when I got out of, Fit told me, he was like, it's okay. Like you did great, whatever. And then Tom pulled me aside and he was like, okay, like, let's rewrite this shit. Like, let's write you in. Yeah. And there were so many people that were in a similar position to me, like talent, where they were like, they had seen how much I was like going through and how much I like was just not getting any opportunity. So there were so many guys that were like, hey, like, I'm so happy for you. Congratulations. Nice. So that was like really cool because it felt like there's so many people backstage that were going through the same thing as I was going through, like just wanting it so bad, but just like never really getting their foot in the door and just feeling like, every week they come to TV and like whatever. So, but a lot of the girls were so like not happy with it. They were it was so catty. They were like trying to go write me out of the story and stuff. And I really I had such a tough skin because I'm like, I don't care. Like, I'm going to do this. This is like my chance, my opportunity. And I just, ever since that match, like, and Eve was so cool. She's like, I was still pretty new. And so she really took me under her wing and we had some amazing matches, especially like non-televised stuff when we were just on the road doing house shows. And it just turned into this like amazing thing. And AJ was off doing her own thing too. So we had kind of like elevated ourselves within the company and that really led to our storyline together. But even then, so as I started, the day that I won that battle royal, I was still literally wearing like the super colorful, shiny shit that didn't really match who I am. And as I started getting more momentum and proving myself more on TV and like, the ratings were good. Like, I was literally proving myself. I started implementing like more of my own personal style, like baby steps, because kind of the way it used to be, I'm sure it's still like this now. It's like, if they like the office or producers or events, they don't like something, they just tell you like, hey, don't wear that or don't do that. We don't like this, but they don't necessarily, unless they have a very specific vision for you, they don't really give you guidance. So you just kind of create your own thing. And so like, because they weren't saying no, I was like, okay. So I kept, and eventually I was like just wearing street clothes, when I was wrestling. And like, I felt so much more, I'm like, this is what I want to represent. Like, I'm this whole new thing. Like, I don't fit into any of these like boxes that I felt like I had to fit in. And it was cool. And then I was going through a lot of stuff personally though, on the personal side. And AJ was really struggling pretty bad with mental health. By the time that we had started our storyline, I think we were both struggling pretty bad and like emotionally. Yeah. And I know she was really going through it with mental health, and I was trying as hard as I could to be there for her, but I just didn't necessarily understand it or didn't know how to help. And so I think that did bond us as well. Like, you know, how much we were both struggling, but the way that I grew up, like I never really knew how to communicate my emotions or like decipher what was really happening with me. I was bottled everything up inside, and I just felt really alone in that aspect. And so we were both kind of like struggling. And then when we had we'd built up a storyline, and like when I lost the title to her, it was like such a special pay-per-view, like my favorite match of all time. And it was so good. Our stuff together was so good because we loved each other. We cared about each other. We wanted to elevate each other and protect each other. So that's why our stuff was so good.
Right.
And like, I can say that because like it was a true representation of like what we were trying to do.
Yeah.
And we kept getting more and more permission because they would start giving us like segments that had commercial breaks and stuff. And like, we kept proving ourselves. And so it was really cool, but it was kind of like, as we were rising to the top, what we had worked so hard for, we were both like, in my opinion, kind of the more success we had, the more we struggled emotionally, just because the pressure and like, there was points where, you know, I had gained weight or whatever. Cause like after I had lost a ton of weight when I was trying to get on TV, I kind of just messed up my system, and what the stuff I was doing to get in that kind of shape was not realistic for a life on the road. Like I couldn't maintain it. Yeah. And then after a certain point, if you're only giving your body a certain amount of calories, it just becomes like not enough. And then you have to keep, you know, cutting it down. So I was just like struggling so bad with like my own self-worth, because, you know, from day one that I got hired, they were like, lose weight. And so, you know, when I was booked all the time and I was really excelling in WWE, I didn't sleep. I was eating like shit. Like I just couldn't take care of my body. And like emotionally, I was like, oh my God, I feel like so much of my value is in my body, just based on like so much of the conditioning I received when I was there. And so that was going downhill really fast. And I felt like so out of control of that, and just no self-worth. And so when I lost the title, we did a couple things after that. I think we had like maybe 6 weeks or something of really good storylines. And then a few months before that, they had launched Total Divas too. And Vince was so obsessed with that whole concept. And that was the first time ever that like the women had that kind of spotlight on them outside of wrestling. And it's because we had gained so much momentum. And the girls that they picked for that, you know, like Natty and the Bellas and like all that, like were very much different than how AJ and I were. So like we understood why we weren't on the show. But you know, Vince had guaranteed us, he told us like that what happens with Total Divas is not going to affect storylines and stuff on WWE TV. And for a couple months it didn't. Like the WrestleMania where I still had the title, I didn't have a match. But they had just introduced Total Divas. And so Total Divas had a segment, and I was like, that sucks. That really sucks. And I was never a part of any WrestleMania, which is fine. Like I get it, but like that really solidified how I was feeling about myself, my self-worth at that time. So I was like, man, I'm not even good enough to like be on TV or to be on WrestleMania as the Divas champion, you know? So that really solidified a lot of stuff emotionally for me and just continued that downhill spiral. And then, so AJ and I had our own thing going when we had our title match. She won the title. And then we had a lot of dope storyline stuff, but the Total Divas was like spilling over onto WWE TV outside of just the E Network. And after AJ and I, our storyline kind of like came to a completion, I took a step back and I wasn't on TV. And like, I totally, out of anyone, like I understand that there's ebbs and flows for everything. Like you're not always on top. You're not always, you know, like you have to build others for like the division to flourish and stuff. So I wasn't on TV, and I was kind of okay with it because I was struggling with my body and emotionally. And like, I never really recovered from that. Like I never really got back on TV besides here and there. And like, because the whole Vince was so obsessed with like the whole Total Divas thing, when I lost the title, I just kind of randomly became a heel for no reason. And because the Total Divas were like the new baby faces. Right. And so everything we did on TV was that. And I was just like, I feel so out of place. Like I don't know what I'm doing or what the goal is or whatever. And yeah. And so that was kind of like the downfall, but I was just like in such a bad place. I had started dating someone, and we had like gotten engaged pretty fast. Cause the way that I had lived my life up to that point was just like, I was just running from my own problems. And so I'm like, okay, you know, maybe this, like, I felt so bad about myself with, as far as like wrestling goes. And I just felt like they did not want me on TV because they had mentioned several times, like, hey, like you've gained weight. And like,
wow.
I really couldn't, like, I just felt like I literally couldn't get it under control. And it's just, my mental health was so bad. And, so the person I was dating at the time, he proposed to me. And so I was like, I told myself, I was like, I thought I was going to get fired. Like I really did, because that's how long, like, I kind of wasn't relevant at all. And I felt like the way that they perceived me, or the way that they were looking at it, was like, well, she's like gaining weight and whatever, like doesn't care anymore and all this stuff. And they had given me like 2 weeks of leave, which is kind of unheard of. They don't really give anyone leave, but I think they knew that I was really struggling. And that really solidified kind of like that. I just felt like I was done. And so I wasn't booked. And so, I lost the title in like the summer of 2013. And then for those like 6 months or whatever, leading up into 2014, I just didn't do much. And that's where I got engaged. And that's where I had that little leave, those few weeks of leave. And then like, I kind of got back on the road again. And like, there was one, cause like, no matter what, the way it was then, and I feel like it's probably the same now, like, even if you're not on like in a storyline that or super relevant, you go to TV no matter what, because you just never know. Like you know, they rewrite the script 10 times before the show goes live. So they always bring all talent to TV, even if you're not doing like house shows and stuff. Like if you're not in storyline, no matter what, all talent goes to TV. And it was in January. And I didn't get any travel. Cause you would always get your travel emailed to you like the week before you had to, you know, get on your flight. And so I was like reaching out to the travel people, and they were like, yeah, you're not booked. Cause they had just brought on some new guy, that was like I think they were trying to make him the head of talent. And like, I just wasn't booked. And I was like, oh my God, like it's happening. And so like, I reached out to Tom, who was our writer, the women's writer for a while. And he had written all my stuff for me and AJ and like everything for so long. And he was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Like, I'm going to get you on the show no matter what, whatever. So they got me, they were like, okay, you're going to go to TV. And so TV was in Baltimore, and it was it was the beginning of January. So super, super cold in Maryland. And it was crazy. Like I had to do like 2 or 3 flights. I got stuck at one airport because like the planes were frozen over and stuff. So I finally got to Baltimore for TV, and it was really late in the day. And like, I got there and I wasn't booked. I wasn't on the show. And I was like, ugh. And I'm like, what am I doing? And like, I just had this moment where I was like, I feel like I'm done. And it was in Baltimore. It's where I debuted. And I just like, I was like, what a full circle thing. I was like, I feel like it's a sign. And so I just asked for my release, and they were like, you know, just think about it. And I came back to SmackDown the next day, and I was like, yeah, I'm sure. And then I just had one last match with AJ. I think it aired on Superstars or something. And that was it. And then I just, for like the next year or so, I struggled so bad, because like, I never really addressed any of the stuff emotionally that I was going through. And it wasn't just from wrestling. It was for my whole life. Like I just didn't know how to process emotions or like face any of my pain. And you know, that stuff stemming from, you know, my whole life, but really, really was brought to the surface through my career. And I just had a really shitty marriage, and I started a business, and that business, Celestial Bodies, I've had that for 7 years. And that is the business that I just ended up, that I'm closing this weekend. Actually, the store's closing this weekend. Yeah. But what I learned is, you know, when I built the business, it wasn't from a place of like, oh my God, I have this big vision and this message. And it was more so like, I felt like, I'm never going to do anything as big as wrestling before. So like, I need to create something that's my own. And so I used my business as a vessel to like feel purpose. Yeah. And so it was kind of backwards. They're like, you know, it took me the way that I look at my business that I've had for 7 years since I left wrestling was like, I built this vessel for my own healing. Like I learned so much about myself, and like my business evolved as I evolved. And like this past year I struggled with like, I knew I wasn't aligned anymore. Like it's not what I wanted to do with my life anymore, but I had tied my identity to it so hard for so long. Cause like I felt like a loser when I left wrestling, like I was like, I didn't accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. And so like it was so fear-based. Like I created it because like I was so scared that I wasn't going to ever do anything again after wrestling. And so I used it as this crutch, and I created so much of my identity around it. But I wouldn't trade any of it, because the whole journey is like, oh my God, like at this point, or, this past year when I was struggling with what do I do with my business, I truly took a step back, and I was like, oh my God, like everything I've built is so amazing. Like I have this amazing team that helped me build it to what it is. And, a year and a half ago when I started really going through all my personal transformational stuff, like just becoming who I am now, and really sifting through all the stuff that I avoided my whole life, the painful things that I never processed or expressed. I really was like, I have been looking at this wrong for so long. Like I had been looking at like what I wasn't accomplishing with my business, because like I wanted it to grow, I wanted it to be bigger, I wanted it to be better, and I was ignoring like all the amazing shit in between, like all of the beautiful like partnerships I built, all the things I learned, all the people that I had the opportunity to like be a leader. Like the leadership aspect that I got from having my business, invaluable. Like and so when I made the decision to close my business and like start what I'm doing now, my fiance, he's been a big part of like a lot of my like transformation. And he's like, the best gift that you could give any of these girls that work for you is to show them like to follow your heart, like no matter what, even when it's hard, even when it's like sad or bittersweet. Cause like, but I didn't want to stay doing what I was doing because it didn't align with me anymore. Just like how with wrestling and stuff. So, it's been such a ride. And like, I feel like only now, like this year, do I have such a different type of perspective on what my career in wrestling was. And I love wrestling. I love wrestling so much. And I love it more today than I did when I was wrestling.
Wow. Yeah. Hey, well, what do you think the cause is that, though, for you just to look at it in a better light? You at first saying, I wasn't even a wrestling fan. I didn't know what to expect. Then when you were leaving, you're saying, I didn't get to accomplish the things I wanted to accomplish. But now, what is it now that just gave you a different perspective and different look on it?
My God. I understand what it is. Like when I was in wrestling, I feel like you can never see something for what it is when you're in it, right? Like a relationship or a phase of your life or whatever. And because I was so consumed with my own pain and like my own like lack of self-worth. And I was, so insecure about my abilities. And I had always looked at it like, this isn't me. This isn't a representation of me, like this person that I am in wrestling. Yeah. But now I see it as like all of those things happened because I am me. Like I am the like the common denominator in everything that has ever happened to me. Like it happened because of like who I am, like my spirit, like my message, like all those things, even though it was clouded then. So like, is that recognition, is that like, I did do all that and it wasn't what I wanted it to be, because like, I couldn't recognize myself. I was so consumed with so much other, like lack or what I thought I wasn't or whatever. And like wrestling is so beautiful because so wrestling fans are to me the most like loyal mother out there. And it's because like, it's not like, oh, wrestling is whatever people say about wrestling, you know, like people talk shit about wrestling, but like wrestling is literally like, it's just like anybody who watches a TV series that they love or like a sports team that they love, because it is, it's what we do in the ring as performers. Like we are delivering a feeling to anyone who's watching. And I couldn't grasp that then, but now I see it for what it is. And I'm like, I see like back then, like I had so many young girls that would reach out to me like on Twitter, or they had fan sites for me. And like, I never really understood why, but it's because I represented something so different to them that, you know, that there wasn't really a lot of out there. And because I was just myself, like I didn't have this big character or whatever, like I feel like it resonated so much with like younger girls who might've been struggling with the same like body image issues that I was struggling with. And so now I see that for what it is. And it's like so beautiful. And like, I have a couple girls that were maybe like 13, 14 when they started following my wrestling journey that are like adults now. And I see how much like they flourished and stuff. And it's like, it's almost like watching myself too, like how much I've grown. But I have so much respect for wrestling because it's truly like, it's art. There's so much that goes into it. It's not just like the moves. It's literally like, first and foremost, you protecting yourself and then protecting the person you're in the ring with. And then it's about giving the fans something that like moves them, you know, something that's like, that is beautiful for whatever they're going through, whatever, you know, a match or their favorite wrestler represents to them. Like it's a feeling. And so to have such power in your hands and such potential to shift how someone feels in a day is so cool. And so like my heart is with wrestling. Like I love wrestling because of what it is. And I see that so much more clear now that I don't do it anymore. But I went back to the Mae Young Classic in 2018. Right. That was really cool. That was kind of the very beginning of like my whole evolution of like this big transformation I've had internally. But it was cool to go back and wrestle because it was more so on my terms. Like I felt like I had just evolved so much since I had left. And like, I had started getting all my tattoos and I looked different. And like, I had the opportunity to sit down with Michael Cole and be like, dude, that was, cause I know that I don't know if he feels, I think he might feel a little bit bad about like, because he was the main commentary he on NXT when we were, you know, and he was so mean to us. And like, he really, you know, as a commentator, you have so much ability to shift people's perspective and mindset, the people at home watching TV, right? The match. And he just shit on us like so much. And I know
he was taking phone calls. He was playing games on his phone. Yeah, it was brutal.
Like, it was funny, but it also made us feel like shit. You know, like, and it other people shit on us because of it, like fans, like and it was just added more to the whole concept of like, you know, people used to refer to the Divas matches as bathroom breaks. Sure. And so it didn't help our cause because it was the first ever all-female season. And like, they were just shitting on us still. Like there was nothing to elevate the women for a long time. And I know he was just doing his job and he was just, you know, making his name. And so I had the opportunity to sit down with him and Beth and Renee, because they did the commentary for the Mae Young in 2018. And I've always loved Renee. She's the coolest person ever. So genuinely cool. And Beth, if anyone, so besides like Eve and AJ, Beth, like she's as cool as she seems, like in real life. Like she's such a dope ass person and she really loves wrestling and she cared so much. But you know, she was caught up too in trying to get a spot on TV and stuff. So, but she always like took me under her wing. And especially when there was like people giving me a lot of shit, she would be there. And yeah, she was amazing. I traveled with her for a little bit. But yeah, so it was cool to sit down with the three of them and really just talk about, because they were like, what's the story? Like, what do you want to talk about during your matches? And I told them, I was like, you know, it's so much more about this evolution of like who I am. And I told, and Michael Cole was like, he apologized about, you know, like how that during that time. And I was like, like, I get it. I totally get it. It wasn't personal, obviously, but it was cool to have that moment, like that we all kind of came back after, you know, however many years. And it was like so cool. And so my first match with the Mae Young was pretty short. I forget her name. It's horrible. She was the really like tall, strong Indian girl. We had like a brief match, but it was pretty physical. And then my second match was with Mia Yim, and she's dope because she's always worn my Celestial Body. She's always worn my brand.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And she's always repped it and posted about it. And then, so I got to meet her in person for the first time when I found out we were going to wrestle each other. And like, we had such a great match and we just had such a cool chemistry. And I loved that match we had. And then literally like she got signed right that day, like right after our match ended, like Triple H came out and like signed her. So it was like such a cool like sign off moment for me because like I felt like she had worked so hard to be there and like had earned it so much. And I have a lot of respect for her. So it was so gratifying. It felt so good. Yeah. And I did an interview after that second match and I was like, if I never wrestle for WWE ever again, like I'm completely content. And they offered me a contract after that.
Wow. Really?
But it was like essentially like a developmental contract.
Okay.
And just, it wasn't right for me. And like, I was kind of stepping into this point in my life where I'm like, I'm just not going to accept things that I feel like are less than what my value is. And like, because I did that for so long, like I would have signed anything the first time around when I got signed by WWE. I would have accepted anything just cause like, I need this so bad type of mentality. But like, it was hard to be like, no, but I'm like, I'm done saying yes to things that I don't feel like align with me. Yeah. So, and that moment was like pretty big for me. And then so like, I'm so like good with everything that went down. And those moments were really so much of were the little pebbles that started creating the wave of like this big transformation and like what I do now. Cause like, the business I have now, I started with my fiance and it's called Project This Is Me. And it's literally about helping people like step into exactly who they are without all the things that like they've always thought they've had to be, the boxes that they place themselves. Cause like, think about it. Like we spend our whole lives like trying to be what we think we should be, to be accepted, loved, validated. Right. So, and that's all I did my whole life was like, a lot of my pain and trauma came from just like all of us, like my childhood and like those really deeply rooted things that whether they're family dynamics or a traumatic event or whatever, not receiving love or whatever it is, like you form conclusions around the world about the world very early on before your frontal cortex is developed. And so like before you're the age of like 8, you don't have logical thinking. So when something happens to you or you have like a very repetitive family dynamic where you either don't feel loved, you don't feel heard, or you don't feel like you're allowed to express yourself, you form conclusions, deeply, deeply rooted conclusions about who you are and what the world is. And you carry those conclusions subconsciously with you throughout your life. So all of the clients that we work with, we spend so much time helping them access these really deeply rooted things. And sometimes stuff is so painful that like we don't allow ourselves to access them because like, as a society, as a culture, we're never taught how to process pain, how to process emotions. Right. So most of us just suppress everything. And like, the more you suppress it, the more, and that's why going back when I was talking about chakras and how you can get stagnant energy in your body, like your body holds on to pain and unexpressed emotion forever until you express it. And so like we walk around so heavy, like say it's like we're carrying a backpack every time that something happens to us that we don't know how to work through it or process it, or it's too painful to face. We just put another rock in our backpack and we just walk around with it. And we're so heavy. And so like, we live in this society where people are so afraid to be who they are because they don't think it'll be accepted. And like the biggest thing, like what it all comes down to with what we do with Project This Is Me is saying like, it was never about anyone else. It's always about you. Like when you accept yourself fully, when you love yourself fully, you learn that you don't need it from anyone else externally because we chase it externally. We chase it through our bodies, like love and acceptance through the way we look physically. Yeah. But all we focus on within our program is the internal processes. So when you can like face the things that you could never face before because they're too hard, you don't know how, and you can acknowledge them and like and stand in your truth, like you literally liberate yourself from these like mind created prisons we have. And so when our clients, like we were having this really beautiful, right now we have a set of clients going through a program under Project This Is Me, and it's called Immersion 84. And it's an 84-day virtual experience where they journal every day. We have group calls, we have one-on-one calls. And then so essentially like anyone who signs up for our stuff, usually it's for the external things. They want a better body, they want to make more money, or they want a better relationship. And because those are the things we all chase externally our whole lives. And so we offer that, but it's in the background. So in the background of all the deep work we do, we help people understand how to understand nutrition and like to create their own nutrition plan for their goals. So they never have to have a coach anymore. We teach them all the principles of training, like why your muscles move this way, what this does, like why you train your muscles functionally, and like how to do that and how to create your own plan so you don't need a trainer. And then also another one of the things we offer that runs in the background, it's like an extra thing, is we help people create a morning routine. So it's like, it literally teaches people to be in power of their whole day, starting from the very beginning. So you honor yourself first. So you give yourself what you need, you fill your cup, and then you're able to give yourself to the world, give your energy to the world, right? So those are all the external things that people chase, right? Yeah. So those are in the background. So they're learning how to do those in the background, but in the forefront is all of the very, very deep internal work. And so it's just a beautiful process. And like, it's so cool because this is the first time I've ever done anything like this, but I like, there's moments every single week where maybe it's on a group call where I'm like, guys, I know what you're going through. Like I literally just went through all of this in the past year. And so it's like, and my fiance is the one who helped me through all of my stuff. You know, he really created like a super safe space for me to work through all my pain and trauma and stuff. And so it's this really cool dynamic that we have. And, you know, when I was married, I went through my divorce, I told myself, I was like, I'll never have a business. I'll never do business with a significant other ever again, because it was such a bad experience. But I learned so much about who I am, you know, over these past couple of years. And like, it's become the most fulfilling thing I could ever do is share what I'm doing now with my significant other. And it's so beautiful. And like, I could never have envisioned this for myself, but it's so fulfilling. It's every day I wake up feeling so fulfilled because I'm like, it's like, we're essentially giving people permission to be themselves and like letting them feel what that feels like. And the second that someone gives themselves permission to be who they really are, that gives someone else permission. You know, it's when you see someone doing something where you're like, I could never do that, but it's like, wait, they're doing it. Why can't I do it? You know what I mean?
So it's kind of like extreme therapy. Yeah. And what's crazy is like, you know, we talked a little bit about Western medicine, but so many people, it's interesting. Like all of our clients that we have right now, we were literally their last choice. They're like, I've tried everything. So it's like, because we live in a society where we're like, okay, let me go to a medical doctor and get whatever drugs that will help me suppress my pain or my depression or whatever. And, you know, medical doctors or psychiatrists and stuff, like we have clients that have had the same psychiatrist or a psychologist for 10 years and they have not made improvements. And it's because it's not like we're so much better than anything, but it's because like we focus on all the subconscious shit that runs, like all of our behavior on a daily basis is like 90 to 95% completely controlled by our subconscious. And we can't access that stuff unless we're intentionally pulling up painful memories, you know, dynamics, that traumas, things, and looking at them and saying like, what did this show? What belief did I form because of this? And like, how has it shaped me? And you start like with the way our clients journal, like Grant and I spent months recording all the content for the program for Immersion 84. And we had to be in a really good place to record all the content. Like if we were off ever, like we couldn't film content. So our clients get a video every day, every morning from us for the journal aspect. And it's like, we talk about, like, for instance, like when I was really young, my mom, she went to me and she's like, you're so strong because you never cry. And in that moment I decided,
strength is the ability to keep going with just a smile on your face, and weakness is showing emotions, it's expressing emotions. So that was a deeply rooted belief of mine. So like I have abandonment issues as well from my childhood, and so like I would abandon myself, my wants, needs, desires, and in order to please others, because I never wanted to be abandoned. I didn't want people to leave me. So I had a conclusion that if I express myself, if I ask for what I want, if I set a boundary, that will push someone away from me. And so that was a belief. So I perpetuated that my whole life, because in my mind, I'm like, I know I can't express myself fully. So like, because that will push someone away. But because I wasn't expressing myself, I was creating resentment in my relationships and like pushing myself further and further from someone. And so like all my relationships ended the same way, because I had a belief that no matter what, I would always be abandoned. And so so like I would talk about that in a video, and they would get that in the morning, and then they would be like, what? And so then we prompt, so I would be that video, and then we prompt our clients, like, you know, what things shaped you in your life that told you what strength is and what weakness is. And so they go back in their Rolodex of their memories, and they're like, okay, what things happened in my childhood, or what dynamics existed that showed me what strength is and what weakness is. And so they journal about it. And so that forces them to get it out on paper before their brain can click into like coping mechanisms or things that, you know, because our brains create coping mechanisms to protect us from things that are too painful, right? So like when we don't know how to process pain, and our brain's like, okay, this is way too painful, like it creates a coping mechanism around it, and then you can't access it anymore. So it's very, very deep work, but it's so liberating, because like it's full ownership. Yeah. You're taking full ownership of everything in your life, and you're not running from anything anymore. Because like most things have power over us. Like we choose to give our power to so many things because it seems too hard to face. Like my ex-husband, I had a really shitty marriage, and for a long time I told myself, I'm like, I forgive him. And so that was a surface level, like I forgive him. But there were so many things that continued to happen that he would either say or do that would upset me and like make me feel, it would trigger me back into like emotional states that I would be in when I was married. And my fiance, Grant, he'd be like, you're still like, I know this is hard to hear, but like, you're still giving your power away to this person. And like, that means that you haven't forgiven. And so what I realized is like, I hadn't forgiven myself. I had not acknowledged the things that I brought into that marriage, because like I was in a really bad spot too. So I never acknowledged any of the bad stuff I brought into that marriage, like my inability to communicate, like all of my emotional baggage, like all of that stuff really contributed to how bad my marriage was. And so when I finally recognized and acknowledged that stuff, and then I forgave myself for doing that, because like you always do the best you can with what you have in the moment. Right. So like, that's like something that I believe so deeply in. So like giving myself that grace and like forgiving myself allowed me to forgive him, truly forgive him. And so that was me like taking my power back from that situation. Yeah. And like, there's so many things every day that we give our power to, but we remain in a victim mindset. But, and this is like all the stuff I write about, like on Instagram and stuff, because it's so relevant to me right now. Like I realize how many places I've just given my people and places and events that I've just given my power to, and saying like, this is just how it is. Instead of taking full ownership of like everything that transpired, and like really giving myself forgiveness. And then that allows you, when you forgive yourself, like on a truly deep level, like you can have compassion and forgiveness for anyone in your life, regardless of how bad the situation was, especially people with like, who have like really fucked up parent situations. Like, that's so hard to deal with, because it's what you experience as a child, and that shapes you. So, a lot of people have deeply rooted things with their parents, and like parent and child relationships are so complicated because like, we tiptoe around stuff, So it's just, it's so much of that. And it's so interesting. And like, I have this really like insatiable craving for like knowledge around this stuff, because it unlocks so much for so many people. And it's really is this like, it's this big fucking liberation for everyone. And the more that people are like, I'm done living my life this way, like I am just ready to take ownership of it. Those are the people that like we have like within our program now. And we're building, we just started one called Immersion X, and it's an executive experience. So it's completely one-on-one. And then we are going to be doing retreats, and then in-person retreats, like whether it's family, couples, executives that work together. And then our big vision is doing a massive live event, like a 4-day live event. So we have a lot of work ahead of us, but it's like so fulfilling. So it's like, we'll die trying to do it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like our big vision.
Man, that's so fascinating. Like, I'm getting a lesson right here just listening to you. I'm like, man, I may have to talk about some things with you after this. Man, you just went deep there for a second. But yeah, how would you learn like all this stuff about the mind and the body and just trying to cope with it? How did you, I guess, get interested in this, and where did a lot of your knowledge really come from?
My fiance, Grant, he and I, so when we got together, I was in a lot of pain still, you know, and that was 2.5 years ago. And like, he really normalized, it took a lot because, he was trying to create a space for me to heal, essentially. Cause like, we all heal when we're in a safe relationship. Right. So like when we feel like someone is like, I hear you, like I am here for you type thing. So it took me a long time to trust that, because I've never had that in my life. And so, because you could say you can trust someone, right? But like your nervous system literally does not allow you to like on a cellular level, you have beliefs, right? Yeah. So like I can say I trust you to him, but like some of my actions don't align with that, because there's so deeply rooted like fears of things and like wanting to protect myself. So it literally started, the first big like realization I had is like that how much like armor that I wear every day, like emotionally, to protect myself. Cause I was so afraid to let anybody in my circle, in my personal bubble. And like, I fought him for a long time because I felt like I've always been in a really defensive mode my whole life. And so it was just like slowly, I kept having a realization like, my God, I do this. And I started reading so much, and like, there's certain people that I really look up to, like Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's incredible. He has taught a lot about like all of the physical aspects of like meditation, and like meditation has been life-changing for me, because I would say if like anyone is starting on this journey of like self-discovery, is meditation is like the number one thing that you'll start getting immediate benefits from. But meditation is hard, because when we're learning how to meditate, we feel like we're not doing it right, because like the whole goal of meditation is to quiet the mind. So going beyond our thoughts, because like we're not our brains and we're not our bodies, like we are spirit, right? So we're this awareness around that. And so first, so many of us identify with our brain and body, like this is just our vessel, right? Your body is just your vessel. Your brain is a tool, but we identify with it as if we are that. So if you can it's hard, you can't grasp that intellectually, because your brain cannot perceive anything beyond itself, right? So it's like, okay, I can understand that. So if that's the truth of it, then when I meditate, I'm quieting my mind enough so I can allow this knowledge beyond my mind to come through, and you really get to know yourself on a spiritual level. Yeah. And so so meditation number one is like, and you have to do it over and over and over and over again until like you can kind of just, because we think about everything. And so when we can't get into a meditative state, we're thinking the whole time. So I really learned how to meditate doing like guided stuff first. And then Grant, he studied with a buddy of his that has a meditation center. And he told him one day, like, the best way to think about it is when you're meditating, if a thought pops in your mind, don't judge it. Don't think further into it. Just imagine there's a train just like going in a circle, and you're just putting that thought in a cart in the train, and then just let it go. So like the more that you do that, you're just like you're not judging that you're having thoughts, you're just allowing them. So eventually your mind becomes really quiet and you can access that really deep inner knowledge. And this, I like to call them inner knowings. Like you start to just know yourself a lot better. And so like number one, meditation, you really start to know yourself and you learn that you can quiet your mind and that your mind is just a tool. And I started reading when I was starting to have like a lot of this awakening. I read the book, The Power of Now, like 100 times by Eckhart Tolle. And he's a really influential spiritual teacher. And he had his spiritual awakening. He was going to commit suicide. And he talks about this. And he was like, I hate myself. And then he had this epiphany. He's like, well, if there's an I and there's a myself, that means that there's something beyond this. So he had a realization that like that his awareness, who he really is beyond his body and mind, was the one saying, I hate myself. So then he was like, he didn't kill himself, obviously. And he wrote this book called The Power of Now. And he's done 3 books in a series. And it's essentially about like disassociating from your thoughts, like realizing that you are not your thoughts. Cause like I was struggling a lot with anxiety and so I read it over and over and over and over again, and it started to resonate in different ways. And I was like, okay, I think I can grasp this. And so the biggest takeaway from that book is like, when I would have these overwhelming thoughts of anxiety, I could be like, oh, that's not me. That's just a pattern, a conditioned way of thinking that I've accumulated over my whole life. So that helped. And then just really starting to be, when you can get out of those anxious thought patterns, those conditioned patterns, you can start to like be in the moment. You can feel like you can start to recognize what's happening in the moment instead of constantly being lost in thought. And when I started to be able to be more present, I started learning about breath, like how important breath is everything, right? So when another way to get out of like the cyclical thought pattern is to focus on your breathing. So, and we do this with all our clients, like when you breathe in really big through your nose and out through your mouth, it's like number one, you're forcing your thoughts to focus on the breathing. So you're just thinking about the way it feels going into your nostrils, down into your lungs, like how it feels in your body, and then focusing on how it feels when you exhale. When you exhale, you relax your body. So it's like, so there's that. So it takes away from the cyclical thought pattern, like the tornado in your mind. And then it also calms your nervous system. So you're telling your nervous system, like, it's okay, I'm safe, like I'm here in this moment. And so those are just tools that really started helping me lean more into this, my awareness beyond my body and mind. And then it's just been like reading a ton of stuff that interests me and just kind of like allowing myself to be drawn to things that like, I don't know why I'm drawn to them, but I'm like, I just know I am. So like, I've been learning a ton about astrology, and just, there's a book that I recommend for everyone called The Body Keeps Score. And it's so much about how like our body controls, our body literally holds on to everything that's ever happened to us. And it's truly, the body keeps a score, and that helps people understand when they get pulled into something, and it's because their body is like goes into like a fight or flight, or whatever, a conditioned pattern or something like that. So there's just so much knowledge out there. But if anyone is first starting on this journey of I guess you can really call it anything, like self-realization, self-discovery, expanding your consciousness, is start to meditation, learning different breathing techniques, reading anything from Eckhart Tolle, learning from Dr. Joe Dispenza. There's such a wealth of information out there right now. And as this consciousness, like this hunger and thirst for conscious expansion is growing so much right now. It's becoming more acceptable. Spirituality is becoming more acceptable and more openly talked about. And there's just so many cool things right now. And so it's like, if you feel called to any of that, and you feel like you want that expansion beyond your body and mind, and there's so much out there, so much out there. So it's cool. And right now, there's kind of this collective awakening. Like in 2020, I think a lot of people had this big awakening, right? And people were kind of forced to do a lot of self-reflection and spend a lot of time with themselves. Right. And sorry. And so many people that I know are kind of on a very similar journey because they're like woke up from the way that they have been living this super conditioned pattern living that they have done their whole lives. And I think, how old are you?
24.
24. Okay. So I feel like I'm 10 years older than you. So this kind of generation that we're in right now, like we have this massive opportunity to really shift so many paradigms of like how people have always accepted things to be, right? Yeah. So we're challenging paradigms and it's cool. We're not just accepting like, this is the way it is, like how our parents maybe felt they had to, or our grandparents. And so you can really see differences generationally and like thought, the openness to new concepts and stuff. And I feel like so many of us right now in this age group, 20s to 30s, are the generation that are stepping up and saying like, I'm going to end this generational pain, right? So, think about how like from your grandparents, the things that their indoctrination, how that was driven into your parents. And then your parents drove that into you. So it's like, it travels like a virus. The pain, it travels through your lineage and even on a cellular level. So it's like right now, because we're having this awakening, so many of us in this age group are like, no way. Like it stops with me. Like a lot of our clients there's so many lines of different types of abuse through their family lineages. And like generally what happens if you receive that type of abuse or conditioning or whatever it is, you generally pass that down to your kids because it's the only way that you know how to live or function. Yeah. And so right now there's such a cool opportunity where so many people are saying this ends here. This ends with me. Like I'm choosing not to live this way. And people are also deciding that like they can be a key to help heal their parents or their grandparents. Because our parents, they I think are more trapped than anyone with these paradigms that they've operated in their whole life. And think about how many people suffered like sexual abuse or in that age group, and like mental health wasn't talked about. It wasn't normalized. And so they just lived with all of their pain and shame and guilt. And my mom, she's 67 and she has dementia now because it deteriorated a part of her brain. She lived a life of stress and strife, and she was her nervous system was constantly in fight or flight. Like she never took a breath. She didn't know how. Like her body was constantly felt in defense. And she had a lot of like things that she went through in her childhood that she didn't know how to work through. And her definition of strength was to just carry on, right? You just keep going, you put another rock in your backpack, you keep walking. And so I was living my life that way before I had this awakening. And so like I help her, I help normalize stuff with her and help her talk about things that she's never been able to talk about and never felt safe to talk about. And you can tell it makes her so uncomfortable. Like when she, when there's things that she's like, this isn't okay. So there's so many things that we can do with right now to like help normalize things for especially older generations. It's such a cool time, such a cool time.
Yeah, and I can tell that you're very like passionate about it and really, focus on helping others. But so I guess how it ties into wrestling, do you find yourself helping any other fellow wrestlers that may be going through some things that you're just able to help, I guess, relate to them on a better note since you've kind of been in their position as well from a professional standpoint?
Yeah, I think there's a huge opportunity for it. And that's a good question. That's a great question because I've been like a lot of people that I did work with in that time, I know struggle in their own right. There's a couple of people that I'm still pretty close with that I have talked about a lot of this stuff with. And like, they seem to kind of be on a similar path. But that is a huge goal for me because I do think there's such a poison that gets spread in a business or what's the word I'm looking for? An industry like wrestling, because it's so focused on that external, that, show business, the way that people perceive themselves and their own self-worth when they're on television. And like, so yes, like that's a huge goal for me is to be able to, maybe it's one day getting to speak to, whatever roster is there, and just kind of talking about this whole mental health and spirituality and all this new awareness and stuff that's available to them. And so that's huge because wrestling was such a big catalyst for me. I went through so much painful shit there. And I feel for so many people that I feel like are probably going through it right now that are on TV that people would never assume,
right? That is really cool when you're saying, that's one of my goals to help. That'd be cool if you ever did a partnership with like WWE or any other company out there, AEW. But I saw on your website, I guess there's recommendations from just from others. I saw that Big E typed a very complimentary paragraph, and he just won the Money in the Bank contract. Like, how does that feel for one of your best friends in the industry to rise to this level right now?
He and I are so close, and we used to travel together as well, and we went through a lot of struggles together, like from wrestling, and trying to find where we fit and trying to find our voice and our spot, and we were really there so much for each other, and we've had a friendship for all these years. And I see him every once in a while when he's in town or when I'm in Florida or whatever. And so I reach out, like, I don't watch wrestling that much anymore, unless like I know he has something big, and like I'll always watch him. And I check in with him every once in a while, like see how he's doing. I know he struggled a lot with, just like anyone does, obviously, like, trying to make it, trying to build your career. But it's so funny to think about like his persona that he debuted with versus like now,
right?
How he was a bodyguard, right? And he was just like so serious, this big tough ass. And now like I feel like he gets to be who he is on TV, and he's really like made so much out of that. So I love that, and like I just wish him so much success, and I always want him to be happy with anything he's doing, and I know he wants that for me, and we always check in with each other and stuff. And I think he's making really big waves, and he's gonna make a lot of change while he's there. And I've talked to him a little bit about what he wants to do beyond that, and there's so many cool things. So I have so much respect for him, and like I'm so proud of everything that he has accomplished within wrestling. So I'm really curious to see what he does like after,
So if he were to cash in at SummerSlam, do you think he would cash in on John Cena and Roman, or against Goldberg and Bobby Lashley? Which one would you like to see?
I would hope it would be Goldberg and Bobby Lashley, because I feel like that'd be a hell of a match.
Yeah, that would be legit. So I guess a few more as we kind of wrap up here. So you're obviously big friends with AJ Lee, and everyone knows, she and CM Punk are together. I don't know if you've been hearing the so-called rumors about CM Punk possibly going to AEW. I don't know if you know anything. I don't expect you to say anything, but you're obviously close with AJ. Do you know, obviously, Punk lost his passion for wrestling, but do you know if he's, I guess, gained it back over these years and he's ready to maybe go back in the ring? Is he training? Like, do you know, have you seen anything that would indicate, I can see it happening?
I don't know. So CM Punk has always been kind of like mysterious to me, because like, AJ and I we're super close, but when we see each other, when we talk, we don't necessarily talk much about wrestling. And I think, and I get why, we're on these different paths now, and she's doing amazing writing and stuff. And I just like, I don't know Phil very well. But I did I went to, I think it was his first ever UFC fight. I went to Chicago, and I was with AJ for that. And, or maybe it was his second one. I'm not sure which one it was, but, so like her and I don't talk as much as we used to, or as we'd like to. So I don't know, but I do know that I think for CM Punk, his love is with wrestling, and it's gotten so jaded and stuff for so long because of things that have happened. And, even with them together, like when she was leaving WWE and all that stuff. And, so I don't know. I think that it would be amazing if he found a real, like a home for his love for wrestling, you know. I think like he deserves that, and I would love that for him. So I just, no matter what he does, he's incredibly talented. So whatever he does, I know like he'll do something incredible, but I really don't know. I gotta be honest. I just don't know him as well. So we'll see. I would love to see him in AEW. I think that'd be amazing. Cool.
So last question, I'm sure you get it asked all the time, but you obviously went back for the Mae Young Classic. The Royal Rumble was in Houston last year. Did anyone call you for that? Did you even know it was in Houston?
I had so many people. I think I was traveling for something, and I had a lot of, like, I'm never really active on Twitter anymore, but every once in a while, because like a lot of my wrestling fan base is on Twitter. I had so many people. I was traveling for something, so people were like, "Oh yeah, right, you're at the Royal Rumble," because like it was in Houston. So no, I think really the only time that I've ever really had any communication with, like, you know, producers, writers, and stuff is for the Mae Young. And then like, of course, I'll reach out to Mark Carano or somebody if they're in Houston and I want to stop in, or when I was living in Florida, I used to go to the Miami shows all the time just to hang out and see everybody. So yeah, no one called me. It's just, it's strange. It's this funny thing. When like years ago, obviously I got a speeding ticket in the middle of the night in Green Bay, somewhere in Michigan. And then, because like, you know, when we would do TV tours, you go to a main city twice a year. Like SmackDown goes there twice a year, Raw goes twice a year. So we were back in Michigan in Grand Rapids for SmackDown. I think I had gotten the ticket with Raw like 6 months before that or whatever it was. And I just forgot about it. You know, we drive hours and hours every night between shows and stuff. And so speeding in the middle of the night, I got a speeding ticket and I just forgot about it. I think I left it in the rental car. And then I was at SmackDown TV and I had Jim, he was the head of security at the time, come up to me and he's like, "I have police here, like, wanting to arrest you." And I was like, "For what?" And it was like a warrant out for like an unpaid speeding ticket or something. Yeah. And he was like, "I can't do anything." Because Jim, who, I don't know if he still had a security, but he worked for like the NYPD or something for like 20 years. So he was like, "I tried to talk to them. They're not going to come in here and like put cuffs on you, but like you're going to have to go down to the station." And it was so shitty because I did not it was not even in the same city. Like it was 2 hours away, like the where I got the ticket. And they just either wanted to like mess with me or they were in whatever it was. So, Jim escorted me out to the back and they like put handcuffs on me and like put me in the back of the car. And I was like, it was for a speeding ticket. And like, they took me to the jailhouse court, whatever it was, processed me. And I was in a cell for 8 minutes probably. And so Jim and Mark Carano, who's head of talent relations, were just outside, like eating, waiting for them to process me. And then they picked me up and we went back to SmackDown. No one even knew. I wasn't on the show that day. I had done like a backstage segment or something. So I had like my makeup done. So when they took my mugshot, it was like a nice picture. And then when I got back to TV, Hunter, I had to go see Hunter, and he's like, "We're going to have to release a statement before it gets out. Cause you know, they're gonna," so we had to write a thing for like TMZ or something before it got released the next day. And so it was so dumb. So anyways, every time that Mark is, because I think Mark still travels, Mark Carano, with everybody
actually for TV. Mark just got fired a few months ago.
Oh shit. Up until then he would message me every time they were in Grand Rapids. Because he's like, "Oh, we're in Grand Rapids," because he was there for the whole thing of like the whole arrest. It was so dumb, so stupid. But yeah, so there's like fun little inside jokes like that with people behind the scenes. You know, I was always like really tight with like camera crew and production people and stuff. They're always like such cool people. So I still like talk to a few of them, but nothing really for any storyline stuff for coming back to actually wrestle. And
obviously you're at the Raw reunion, like 2019.
Yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah, that was fun. I got Grant came with me. We drove from South Florida to, I think it was in Tampa, Orlando. We drove and he got to like meet a bunch of people and I got to see everybody and stuff. And it was just like, you know, a little backstage segment, but it was still fun. It was like nice seeing everybody and introducing Grant to everybody backstage. It was fun.
So is there a possibility you're going to come back in the ring anytime in the future? I see that you're focusing on your business, doing really good, but you know, for wrestlers, there's always you know, maybe. So is there a possibility?
Yeah, I would say that. Like, you know, just like I said, like I love wrestling. I really do. Yeah. And it's such a like important part of my story. So I just will always have such a special place for that in my heart, in my life. And so I don't know if I'll get back in the ring. I mean, it'd be cool. I actually signed a contract with a South African company called Slam Force Africa in 2019. And I was contracted for 4 shows in South Africa. And then we did 1 show and then COVID hit. So I still technically have the belt. It's a dope ass belt, but they were a startup. And like, the only reason I really wanted to be a part of it is because PJ Black, you know, he was Justin Gabriel in WWE. Right. He's from South Africa, and he was starting or he was like a part of SFA, the guy that was starting it, who's amazing. His name is Cornelius. They were trying to get like a bunch, you know, this A team of like ex WWE, just, you know, wrestlers in the industry. And like, I was wanting to be a part of it so bad because like their whole concept was wanting to resurrect wrestling in South Africa. And they had more of a like UFC vibe, more hardcore, less like cool. La type shit. And I loved it. And then also like the people that they brought on for the first show, especially, and like people that had contracts with them, they wanted us to be so much a part of the creative of like how it was happening. And like, that was so new to me because with WWE, you just kind of like, it's already established, right? Like you don't really get that much say and in your character as much, or like the creative of storylines. And so like, I loved it because it was kind of like filling this void that I had where I feel like I didn't really get a lot of say in a lot of those aspects. And so I loved it. And like, they treated us incredible there, and the pay was really well. And not that it's about pay, but like the reason why I didn't really do any indie stuff after I left wrestling, is because like, it's such a, like, people don't respect wrestlers that way. And like, it's just like, it was really hard for anyone to make a good amount of money for as much as they were, you know, putting out. And so like, I had like a bad taste in my mouth from that. So like, that's why I didn't really do a lot of stuff independently at all. But with SFA, it was so much more about just like wrestling and, you know, getting to put in my ideas and creating something that I felt I was truly a part of. So I really love that. And so I don't really know if they're going to keep going because it was a self-funded thing. And the guy had, you know, he had put a lot of money into the first show and stuff. So I don't know, but I do still have the title, and I love South Africa, and I would absolutely go back there and, you know, fulfill my contract. But I haven't been in the ring in like over, I don't know, a year and a half maybe. So I'd have to shake off some rust, but I think there's absolutely, you know, the chance for that because like I do love it. And I'm still physically able. So
maybe. At least you're the longest reigning SFA champion.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. So hey, what's the name of your website for Project This Is Me?
It's called thisisme.live.
Thisisme.live, and people just they can get on there and just there's a lot of information on there.
You can read about it. You can read about Grant and myself and what the movement. So Project This Is Me is a movement, and it's like the mother company. And then underneath that, we have all the different experiences that we're building out. So the first experience is Immersion 84. The next one is Immersion X, which is the executive version of Immersion 84. But above all, you can always like subscribe to our email list. And every month we do a series on something. So like last month we did a series where we sent out something every week. And the series was called Change the World, a DIY project. And it's like, so all the things that you can do as an individual to change the collective. And that was a lot of fun writing. And then this month we're focusing on relationships. So intimate relationships, relationship with self, family, friend relationships. So we just sent out the introduction for that this week. And then we'll start we do 4 parts generally each month. And so there's just like a lot of cool information and just like passionate stuff in there. And so, yeah, if anything, and we haven't started a social media, we just have our personal social medias for it right now, but we are starting one. So a lot of that content will go on social, but for right now, the website is just thisisme.live. And then my Instagram is just my name, Celeste Bonin, and same for Grant Ziok. And so all of this stuff that we teach and preach and talk about is on our personal Instagrams, because like our message is just our message. It's across all board, you know, across the board and in every way. So there's just we live what we do, right? So like our message is just our message in work, in personal, in business, and relationships. It's all the same. It's just, you know, it's like, be you.
Well, hey, thank you so much I've learned a lot. Like seriously, like, whoa, I'm liberated. So, hey, thank you so much for chatting with me and just giving me the scoop of your time in wrestling and what you're doing now. And good luck with it. It sounds awesome.
Thank you so much. I had an absolute pleasure talking to you, and awesome questions. So you're very good at what you do.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.